quite an overcast day, but it's nice and warm. Perfect for making a little video. Hi. So where to begin with this? It was Friday the 29th of July 2022. I'm actually due to be performing at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in a musical. It's the first time I've ever done it in my life. I recently fell off the wagon and started smoking again. That was something that a previous trip helped me to kick for a while. I think I managed about 35 days, 40 days, something like that. I've also managed to kick the drinking, and that's been really good. I've never felt better, so I've still got that. But what I thought that I would do with this trip is sort of pre-going to the festival, I would set my intentions in order to stop smoking again. So pretty much what I did, and I've got this written down here. I like to write my intentions before I go into a trip. It's a lot better if I write them down first. I think it sort of goes into the subconscious a bit better. So my idea was to reconnect with myself. I felt like I had been stuck in the sort of egocentric mode for a while. You know, the kind of thing where your thoughts are going crazy with no real end in sight. A lot of people would call it anxiety, I suppose. Don't necessarily sort of feel anxiety anymore. That's something that psychedelics have helped me with massively. But time to time, I feel like I need to trip just to reset things a bit. I'm sure a lot of you that trip will resonate with that. So I set my intention to basically redefine myself as a person that doesn't smoke. I think it's the only way that I can do that. I've done the same for drinking. I consider myself a person that doesn't drink anymore. I had a couple of pints recently and it led to a bad decision, which is why I started smoking again. So I think that was one lesson that I've taken from that. So another thing is just to get a bit more organised in my life, stay more grounded. I find that when you're in that egocentric mode, you tend to not do the things that you need, not speak to the people that you need to, and that's what most of my life's been like before I discovered psychedelics. So I also put that I wanted to feel more gratitude and give thanks effectively. People like my brother, well, both of my brothers, the cast of the musical, who have been amazing and have helped shape me into what I am now, effectively. And it's only been a year since I started doing this. I wanted to thank in particular, and you know who you are, some of my homies on Discord. I love you guys. And also the mushrooms themselves for giving me what they've given me. So thank you all. So the mushrooms that I took, I wasn't really sure what type they were. I actually got them off a friend of mine. It was his first grow and he hasn't tried them before. And me being, I guess, egocentric at the time, thought that, oh, the last time I tripped was on some mushrooms that I am familiar with, and that these mushrooms would be the same. And I think quite often when I go on a trip, I expect it to be similar to the last one, which is never the case. So I took 4 grams of these mushrooms, and this was about 8:30 at night. I didn't feel a sudden come up like I normally would. Normally I take them with a lemon tech. So that involves taking the mushrooms, powdering them, and steeping them in some lemon juice for a while. And what that theoretically does is it breaks down the cell walls in the mushrooms and apparently converts some of the psilocybin to psilocin, which is the chemical that your body actually uses. So your body has to do less of this conversion process. Apparently it helps with nausea, stuff like that. So once I took these mushrooms, about 20 minutes, half an hour later, I started to feel something. It didn't feel quite like other trips that I'd had. It was a real creeper. Normally when I take mushrooms lemon tech style, it's 30 minutes and I'm fully tripping. It hits me like a train usually. So as I was coming up on these mushrooms, I was sat out in my garden. I got up to go back in and begin the trip. I had my music playing, everything was all right, but something didn't quite feel right. And actually, in retrospect, the way that I was feeling leading up to the trip, I probably should have called it off. And I think I'm beginning to understand why. This was obviously all meant to happen. I believe that there are no accidents, and I think this was no accident. When I went back indoors after sitting in the garden, I noticed that the visuals were strange. Not the usual kind of visuals that I get where everything is pillowy and nice and warming and like a loving presence. These visuals seem sinister. I'll try and replicate this and show a picture of what I mean, but it's almost like my entire field of vision had this overlay of these stretched V shapes. And this is very unusual. I've not experienced visuals like that before. And so I got into the trip. I was listening to my music as I normally do. I was lying down on the couch. I think I was listening to Heads by Ott, if anyone knows that. Really nice album, highly recommend checking it out. I'll link it down there. But this mushroom trip, it wasn't emotional. It was all very much in the head. And that's, again, very unusual for me. Normally I feel extreme emotions like gratitude, empathy, and sometimes sadness. I think it depends where I am in my life, and I think this trip reflected that. I'm doing things that are very unusual for me, so going to go and perform in front of a lot of people for quite a few nights, and it's definitely stepping out my comfort zone. So there's a real area for growth there, but at the same time it's pretty daunting. Like subconsciously I can feel it's daunting, even though I know that I can handle it. So I was kind of lying there tripping balls, not as much as I was going to be. The visuals were very much like clouds sort of moving towards me. I wouldn't say like these clouds, they're more like storm clouds. Very white, fluffy, but they were just sort of coming like this. And again, I'll try and make a visualization for this. And it was unbelievably intense. There were a lot of fractals. The air was very visible and thick. I don't know how long I was there for, and this was one of my mistakes. When you're on a trip, your sense of time, it all breaks down. You don't know how long you've been tripping. It can feel like lifetimes. Because of that, I didn't really know where in the trip that I was. So what I normally like to do when I've been tripping for a while, once it sort of starts to die down a bit, I like to have a very, very small toke of some cannabis, like a little joint. I find it smooths out the experience, and it also sort of boosts it, but in a very pleasant way, a very useful way. It can get you into a really introspective headspace, and that's what I was expecting, but it's not what I got. I actually had some Rick Simpson oil, cannabis concentrate, and I made a joint of that in my preparation for the trip. So I don't like smoking tobacco on a trip. I find it makes you really edgy and tetchy, and so what I normally do is I make up a smoking blend with mullein, which is a fluffy plant. It's really good for making a tobacco-free joint, effectively. So I had this joint. I sat down. I got off the couch and I sat down by a table that I've got that's got candles and incense burning, which is something that I've recently introduced into my trips. I think looking at a flame while you're tripping is quite a marvellous thing to behold. And the incense as well. I use a couple of incenses that I like. It's like the Indian incense that you can get everywhere. And there's one called meditation, and there's one called sacred ritual. And I typically put the meditation on one in my day-to-day, but the sacred ritual one I save for trips. And I know it's kind of like, it's marketing, but the scents to me feel like the right ones to use in certain situations, so it kind of works. I also have some Palo Santo. I just think it's one of the best smells ever, and on a trip it can really make you feel comfortable, and it's just a really nice scent. I think there's something very primal about it. It's very familiar, so I burn it occasionally, even when I'm not tripping. And so I sat down by my little altar, burnt some more incense, some sacred ritual, burnt some Palo Santo, got a nice whiff of it. The trip wasn't going very well at the time. It was, like I say, not very emotional, and I can't say I was enjoying it. I think there was a sense of foreboding in it, like I was about to get slapped by the universe, basically, although I didn't know it at the time. I lit this joint, I had a couple of puffs of it. I couldn't taste any of the concentrate that was in it. I just sort of made a little line down the center of the joint, probably less than a milliliter. So I sat there, had a few tokes and didn't really feel anything. And my immediate thoughts were, this stuff's almost 3 years old. Maybe it's not working anymore. So I had a few more puffs and then I could actually taste it. I thought, yeah, that's really nice. That's the cannabis taste. I'm just gonna savor this. So I decided not to smoke anymore. And then I went to lie down back on the couch again. I continued listening to my music. I put on Fire Dance by the Kaya Project. I'll also link that down below. It's one of the most significant albums of my life, I think. It really defines to me what the psychedelic headspace is about. I can't describe it. There are many ancient instruments being used in it, yet it's mixed with very upbeat sort of electronic music. I can tell the guy that made it put his heart and soul into it. I think he worked on it for several years, and yeah, it remains dear to my heart, that album. Unfortunately, as this trip went on, well, I'll describe it to you. Yeah, so I was lying down on the couch and all these crazy visuals were coming at me. I didn't feel very comfortable. The music started getting way more intense. I started to feel the trip going south. This happened to me once on LSD. When I got cannabis involved. It was way too early in the trip to be smoking. I didn't realise my sense of time was out the window, and basically I kind of knew what I had to do in the moment. Fortunately for me, I have done a lot of research. I've done a lot of I guess I'd call it grounding practices. This is something that would kind of really help me out later on, and I basically decided that this trip was going bad. And that's a horrible feeling when you know that a trip's going bad. It's like, how long have I got left? How long am I going to be in this state? And you get this like overwhelming sense of foreboding and worry and anxiety. And so I stood up and decided to go outside. I lay down outside. It was fairly cool at night, which was very fortunate. I lay down on the patio just outside my back garden. I lay there for a while and just tried to compose myself. It's the worst thing that you can do is panic. If you take anything away from this video, then just know, if you ever get into a state like this, the best thing that you can do is just try and compose yourself. I can only imagine what it'd be like if you started to panic in that situation. So I managed to compose myself, keep myself calm, and just started to think of things that I could do in order to mitigate this trip going south. I lay there for a while until I realised that there were ants crawling on me. So I decided to get up, and actually I felt a lot better after lying there for a few minutes. So I went back in, and I thought, just like my LSD trip that went south, that my brain might do a emergency reset, which is what happened. And actually the rest of the trip was pleasurable and it was fine after that. But I think because this cannabis concentrate was so strong, I went back inside and everything just got turned up to 11. I felt very uncomfortable when I went back inside, realised that I was starting to trip harder than I've ever tripped in my life. I think I laid down for a while and realised it wasn't getting any better, so I went back outside again and laid down. And this time it didn't have the desired effect at all. It was getting stronger and stronger, and anyone that's taken mushrooms will know that they'll come and go in waves. So you'll be sort of tripping at this level, and then at an unpredictable moment in time, they will ramp up the intensity for a while, and then it will go back down. Sometimes it can ramp up a lot, sometimes it can ramp up a little bit, and it gradually tapers towards the end of the trip. But I was not anywhere near the end of the trip. I was probably about 2 hours in, by my estimates. I don't really know. So I was outside lying there realising that it wasn't improving, and I remembered a guy that I know on Discord that talks about how he likes to go into the shower when he trips, and I thought, yeah, that could be something that might work. So I got up, I went into the bathroom. I always have a little bowl of fruit So I brought my little bowl of fruit to the bathroom, which is the oddest place to have a little bowl of grapes. I had a little bit of cucumber in there as well. So I like to eat sort of a little bit into the trip. And so I went up there and I stripped off stark bollock naked. I turned the shower on, put it to a cool temperature, and I just listened to the water. That was kind of soothing in itself. But I was in a bit of a lull at that point. The mushrooms hadn't pushed a wave at me, which is like, I guess it's a surge of tryptamines. I don't know if it's as your body starts to digest them that occurs. I don't know. But whatever it was, however it works, it was a bit of a lull at that time. So anyway, I got into the shower. I also brought my iPad upstairs that I'm recording this on, because I figured that if I need to contact someone, I can do that either through Discord or whatever. I soon realised I wouldn't be able to contact close family members through Discord easily. So got out the shower, I was still naked, dripping wet. I walked downstairs, I was really cold, and went and got my phone, went back upstairs, got in the shower. And then I sat there in the shower with the water coming over me. It was quite comforting, but it wasn't doing enough. I realised at that point the potentiating effect that the cannabis had on the tryptamines in the mushrooms, and it wasn't showing any sign of letting up. It got more and more intense. The visuals were absolutely insane. I wasn't able to enjoy them even though they were beautiful. The brain, it seems to have a mapping of everything that you've experienced or everything that can be experienced. So what I was experiencing was almost every part of my brain communicating to every other part of my brain all at once, and that was represented in an overwhelming visual sensation. I was seeing geometric patterns over everything. I was seeing digitized versions of real life. So if you imagine a low resolution monitor, if you imagine looking through a filter that's low resolution, and then it gets gradually higher resolution, and then it will go lower resolution again. I'm really interested in these digital visuals. I don't know where they come from. It's very unusual to find something like that can happen in a biological machine, a meat machine. But anyway, all of this was going on. I had very intense auditory hallucinations. I wasn't hearing voices or strange noises, not any more strange than usual when I'm on a trip, but there's a very sort of wibbly sound. It's like, I'll try and replicate it for you. It's like, and with the water from the shower hitting the bathtub, it's not like a walk-in shower. I was just getting that constantly, and it's quite disconcerting. So I decided at this point that I had my iPad, I had my phone. I'm not going to call anyone just yet. Don't want to make anyone worry. So what I did was I realised that I was tripping so hard, having an extremely challenging trip, and that time didn't exist. So what I tried to do was keep grounded by going on YouTube and searching for some videos, because at least that way I figured that if I watched something familiar of a known given length, I would be able to watch that and have the time pass. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. I went onto YouTube and all I could think of to type was nice video. I wanted something soothing, something to calm me down, and it turns out if you type into YouTube nice video, you get those videos where it's like 100 hours of something. It is like 100 hours of that poet. I can't remember his name. He does like children's poetry, and he's become a big meme, and he goes, nice. And I decided I didn't want to watch 10 hours, 100 hours of that. The next thing was I tried to look up South Park, because I thought that's 20-minute episodes, if I can watch a few of those. And then I thought, South Park while I'm feeling like this is just like what Psychosis is made of, and I'll probably ruin South Park for myself forever. So I decided against that. And then at that point I decided to reach out. So I reached out to a mate on Discord, and he didn't answer. I felt such a sense of urgency in that moment, and all you want to do is basically like telepathically communicate to someone how you're feeling and have them immediately there to provide some sort of fix for what you're going through. And He didn't pick up, which is understandable, it's fine. So what I did was I got out the shower, because at this point, being in the shower wasn't enough. I was barely holding on to reality. I had multiple ego dissolutions, ego deaths. My sense of self disappeared completely. I forgot who I was. I didn't forget where I was. I kind of still knew where I was, but all I could think of was that my personality had been deleted and I was going to be forever trapped in this realm of psychedelic, overwhelming visuals and overwhelming anxiety forever, and that I wasn't going to be able to do the things that I normally do anymore. It was terrifying, the thought of having no identity in a world that relies on identity. And yeah, it was terrifying. I held on to reality in any way that I could, whether it was looking at my hands. I, at that point, started to think about trip killers. Anyone that's done psychedelics for a while and been on the internet a bit, doing their research, might have heard of the concept of trip killers. And the first thing I thought was, benzodiazepines, I need some. I want this to stop. I always, in the past, it was a bit of a sort of egoistic behavior. I thought, I'm never going to need those. In fact, if I've got them lying around and I know that they're there, I'm not really going to be able to fully get into the trip, because I'm gonna be thinking that I've got an emergency switch if I need it, when really what I need to be doing is riding the whole thing out. But at that moment in time, everything felt so urgent that I just couldn't think of not ending this trip as soon as possible. So anyway, I called someone that I know has a sort of a selection of pharmaceutical products, let's say, and they basically had a look around for me while I was trying to research, while I was in this state, what kind of substance can help kill a trip. And anyway, while this person was looking for the drugs, I was barely holding on to reality. I was sat in my bedroom and just clinging on. I described it to people as, basically, I'd gone so far down the rabbit hole, but thankfully I'd left a thread that I could pull myself back up with, and that was what got me through this, along with hearing other people's voices and things like that. So anyway, while they were searching, I decided to go on Discord onto a brilliant server called the Experimenters. I tried to the best of my ability to find the button to get onto that server. On my iPad, everything was moving around. Thankfully, I still had the wherewithal to be able to actually find it. I joined the voice chat. There was a ton of people in there, and I've been in there a few times before. There's some really great folks in there, and they're all about harm reduction, advice for drugs, zero judgment. I've always felt really welcome there. People always share funny memes, knowledge, advice, wisdom. So I felt comfortable to go there. I immediately went into the general chat channel, and because my contact had found some temazepam, and I wrote in the general chat, is temazepam a trip killer? And I had to edit this message a few times because it didn't make any sense. It probably took me a few minutes to do this, and I didn't get an instant reply, so again, understandable, but I was feeling pretty urgent at this point. I jumped straight into the voice chat channel, and thankfully there are a few people there that kind of knew what was going on, and they asked me to slow down, tell them exactly what I did. So I told them that I took 4 grams of mushrooms a couple of hours ago. I think I gave them the time that I took them, and I said, and don't take any of this as advice, like, I'm not an expert, this is something that I'm going to be looking up and clarifying for myself. I don't know if in fact temazepam is a trip killer even, but I think they said that it was. And at this point, my contact said that they found this bottle. It's like 10 milligrams temazepam. So I thought, oh great. So I went in there, but I didn't get the answer I was expecting. The answer was something like, well, you're probably best off just waiting it out, because by the time you take the temazepam, it's going to take about half an hour to kick in, and then all it's going to do is help with the anxiety, which completely shattered my notion of what a trip killer was. I thought it was something that you would take and it would, I don't know, it would block the tryptamines from doing what they do and bring you back down to earth and maybe knock you out or something. So that was not the answer I was looking for, and I kind of dreaded it a little bit, but these guys were really cool, and they basically said, good luck and write about it. I said, yeah, sure. I still had my sense of humor, amazingly. The waves of mushroom tryptamines were just unrelenting. 4 grams is quite a strong dose, and it's something I've only done once. I did it like a month ago or something. So yeah, I had some major hubris there, thinking that it would be the same. So that was one lesson that I learned, really, of many. I ended up just wandering around the house. I called my brother, who's actually vacated the house for the night. He's staying with me at the moment, and he vacated the house to go somewhere else to stay for the night so that I could trip, which was really awesome of him. And basically I called him and I said, bro, can you come home? And yeah, he managed to make it home. I don't know how long passed between that phone call and when he actually came home, but I was still naked. I went downstairs, I sat on my chair, and everything got exponentially worse. Like, the trip got exponentially intense. It felt like a DMT trip that was maybe more intense than any DMT trip I've had. Imagine being stuck in Disneyland, or like a cartoon Disneyland, not Disneyland Paris or Florida or anything like that, but actually being in a Disney cartoon, a really chaotic one, and you don't want to be there. It's like the last thing that you want. That's kind of what it was like. And the music that I was listening to, normally I have great experiences listening to this music, and all that I got from the music was that it felt like it was the soundtrack to being stuck somewhere forever in a psychedelic landscape. And so I had to turn it off, and yeah, it just got more and more intense, more and more intense. And my brother came back, like I say, and we just talked for a while. I was kind of losing my memory. My short-term memory would go and then it would come back. He would be saying something to me but it wouldn't register. All I could think about is, like, I've turned myself into a vegetable, basically. Like, at this point, at least the dissolution of reality and my identity had gotten a lot better, but the visuals were so overwhelming, and the feelings, that I was just like a trapped animal, really. I managed not to panic throughout any of this. That's the other thing the guys on the Discord server said. They said, just like think to your grounding practices. So what I've done in that previous LSD trip that went south, I managed to breathe my way through it. So like deep breaths in and out for as long as I could do it, basically. But I kept forgetting to breathe deeply. I tried to sit in a meditative pose and just try and ride the experience, and it was intensely difficult to do. Like, my attention was constantly shifting in and out of reality. It's the kind of thing, like, it's hard to explain if you haven't gone through it, but if you look at an object like a chair, imagine if you forget what a chair is and you're looking at it and it's confusing you because you think you know what it should be, but actually you've forgotten what any semblance of an idea of a chair is. And that's terrifying. So anyway, my brother sort of helped keep me calm. Thanks, bro. And he basically got me to think about just lying down and just going with it, putting a blindfold on, listening to some music. I said, I can't listen through headphones, it's too intense. Oh, I can't listen to any music, it's too intense. He tried to get me to eat something as well. I thought, nah, it's not going to work. I think that was for the best. I ended up eating after the trip anyway. And yeah, I basically realised that I had about half an hour to go at that point. I thought I was going to be in for a very long night of this. I thought it's either going to last all night or it's going to last forever. And I was kind of biting down, just ready to be stuck in this like complete loss of touch with reality and identity. Fortunately, I had a clock that was kind of opposite my field of view where I was lying down, and I was looking at it every now and again, and I could see that it was actually moving. It was the minute hand that was moving towards midnight, and that really helped me. Everything was getting better by this point. It was getting exponentially better just as it got exponentially worse. So it really, the trip kind of went like this. I smoked the cannabis, it went like that, and then it sort of did that, and then towards the end, back down like that. I just felt better with every couple of minutes that passed at that point. I was like, yes, I'm coming back. And it was the most wonderful thing. And I ended up calling my mother. She knows that I'm into all this. She knows it's physically safe. She didn't worry. I had a really nice chat with her and my brother. I feel more connected to them than I ever have. I'm still in a bit of an afterglow, but I feel like something's changed in me in terms of how I see relationships with friends and family. There were a lot of lessons learned there. I'm going to be staying well away from that cannabis concentrate, and actually also the other thing was these mushrooms were an unknown quantity. No one had ever taken them before. I was the first person in the world to try them, and really you've got to get to know them. You really have to get to know them. Each lot is different, and you need to start very low, very slow, and respect them, respect yourself, because otherwise shit like this can happen. So I'm just going to read through a few of the notes that I made after the trip. I had a really good chat until about 5 in the morning, from about 1 to 5, with some really good close mates on Discord, and they sort of helped me put things into perspective. Some of them have been through similar things, and it's really nice to have that, to have someone that understands what you've just gone through. I immediately felt the lessons from it. It felt like it was something that was meant to happen. I don't regret it, but from now on I'm going to make better choices, and that's what I got to take from it, really. Even your favorite music when you're in a state like this can be intense and taunting. I'm hoping that I haven't ruined this music for myself. I don't think I have. I've had it on my mind all day and relived the feelings of what it was like when I was listening to it in that state. But I think with time I'll be able to listen to it again and it'll be fine. People that you love will pull you out of stuff like this, so always make sure, like, even if you don't have a trip sitter, just make sure that you will be able to contact someone if you have to. I'm not saying this is going to happen to anyone, but do not underestimate the effects of cannabis, especially concentrated cannabis. When you're on a mushroom trip, it just dials it up to 2000%, depending on the person, of course. Something I learned was that trying to communicate your urgency when you need help is impossible. You want it to be telepathic. You want people to understand immediately, but what you'll find is you'll call someone, they'll be in the middle of something. You can't just get access on tap to someone. That was something I learned, I guess. Yeah, for all those that are seeking an ego death experience on various substances, I'd say it could possibly make or break you. It's terrifying. I feel a real sense of connection with people that experience depersonalization, derealization now. I hadn't experienced it myself before. I had an ego dissolution experience on DMT, but it only lasted a few minutes. But this was just relentless. This was on and off for at least an hour. I can't recommend it. Yeah, just because you think that you've had positive experiences on mushrooms, just be careful. I think they can really turn on you. There's definitely lessons in that when you have a challenging trip. I wouldn't go necessarily seeking out a full-blown experience like that. It's something else that I've been thinking about a lot recently is I don't think that hell is as it's depicted in a lot of faiths. Hell to me is mental torture forever, and I definitely got a taste of that last night. I'd seen it before on other trips. That is what some people are going through. They're going through mental torment, and it's the worst thing that you can go through, to be honest. Physical torture is one thing, but I'm a big believer that like most of the suffering that we have is up here, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. It's fucking horrible. The other thing is I tend to get these profound sort of thoughts that come up. A lot of people get these. Just that when you're stuck in that eternal, timeless space and you're drifting in and out of consciousness, it feels like you are sort of going through a birth-death cycle. And I wonder why that it feels so familiar when you're on a trip. I'm pretty convinced that we experience these states before, during, maybe slightly after we are born or we die. And I got a very big sense of that last night, as I do in most trips, but this was this was off the scale. I felt like I was dying and being reborn again and again and again, forever. Yeah. If you have any niggling doubts before you start a trip, or you're trying to fit one in with your schedule, just be aware that is not the ideal mindset to be going into a trip. I kind of felt like I was going to use these as medicine to help me stop smoking, along with a few other ancillary intentions that I had. It turned out that wasn't going to be the case. I still ended up smoking today, and the lessons that I got out of it are very much unrelated. I would say it was mostly to do with connection to other people, connection to myself, a bit more understanding hopefully, how all this shit works. You get the trip you need, not the trip that you want. And now all I really want to do is just understand what I've been going through. I'm going to be integrating this for a long time. I'm going to be talking about it with other people, and yeah, just stay grounded, do the things that I need to keep this body healthy, to keep this mind grounded, and that's all I can do for now. And just to live. I found it very, very hard to let go when I was in that state, and while I was waiting there for it to wear off, I was desperately trying to go with the flow. But I think this is what we do as people. We cling to things, and we resist absolutely any change, and a psychedelic trip is just constant change, and we can't accept it, so we cling on for dear life, and all that does is cause us more anxiety, fear, and general bad feelings. I found it almost impossible to let go as I was trying to ground myself, sitting meditatively and breathing. I just felt like it wasn't working. I just was not prepared for such a strong trip. So it's a metaphor for life, I guess. Life's a lot easier when you go with the flow. Trust me on that. Well, that's about it. I don't know what I'm going to do about editing this video. It's getting quite long, and this is not something I've done before. I've decided to basically get this out there, and hopefully it will help someone else. Maybe someone else will resonate with this. And I'll try and get it uploaded to YouTube, and yeah, I look forward to hearing people's thoughts. That's about it. So yeah, just remember, you don't have to be a billionaire to go to space. That's something I learned on mushrooms. Thanks for watching, and take care. All the best.